Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good morning.
Yeah, it's great to see you. How's things?
Things are great. Things are great. Yeah. This is for us, it's absolutely thrilling because, after you work on a film like this, it's not always, I think, this exciting to release. I am always thrilled, but there's something about this one that's particularly, I think, exciting just because I'm so proud of what everybody accomplished on this, and it's so very different, and so we're just
Yeah,
having, I think, a great time introducing it.
it must be lovely now, kind of the different stages of an animation and how long that journey takes, but to for it to be connecting already, with audiences at festivals at the minute, but it's still connected with people that are excited for this film on a big screen.
Yeah, for sure.
What does the original book and the story and the characters mean to you, and what was your initial discovery of these characters in the story?
Yeah, I first ran across it and was introduced to it when I dropped into DreamWorks to see what they had in development. I was
Mm.
looking for something that I could work on next, and the Wild Robot was instantly the one that stood out to me. And just even in the very briefest description, the idea of a robot in a wilderness, that's compelling. So I read it, and it was confirmed that it was better than I thought that it might be. The character relationships they're fresh, they're believable, they're intricate, which I like.
Mm.
It's not a fairy tale. Even though everything in it is very, very fanciful, it plays like it's really happening, if that makes sense. And that's the kind of stuff I really, really like. Yeah, so immediately, that was my introduction to it. I'm
Yeah,
so grateful it was there when I dropped in.
it's lovely because I've got two kids and I have to give a name check to one of their wonderful teachers, Barb, who is a woman who just adores this book so much. And every year, with her new class, introduces this story to the children and just really brings to light. She reads it to them. Every day they have a reading session where she would sit and read this story to them. And she really just brought it to life for them. And so it's so lovely when you have someone like that who has such a connection with a particular book, with a particular story, and encourages kids to find their own imagination into the story as it's being read to them.
Yeah, it's a very popular book here to be read in school as well. My daughter read it,
Mm.
and yeah, and I didn't realize it had been nearby, but I didn't really pay attention to it because it was her book,
Yeah.
and then once I started the project, I told her what I was doing, and she's like, "I read that book, remember?" And she pulled it out. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it was right there the whole time."
Yeah. And when you find that project's there, sort of thing, how much is attached to it and stuff? Because you've got obviously such a great relationship with storytelling and with animation. There are different ways of telling a story through different types of animation, and really finding that right emotional connection through the type of animation it's used. I think it's so important. Um, you did. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon is a film that we go back to again and again and again, and so much of that has got to do with how it's told visually. With the Wild Robot, talk to me a little bit about the choice of telling the story and the types of animation and the way that you would craft these characters for us.
The opportunity to do animals that are animals would be the first thing that comes to mind. We're very used to doing animals that are much more anthropomorphic, and we love that. That's great. I love that. But this was a fresh thing to everybody. We all grew up looking at films like Bambi, etc. I worked on Lion King and very similar with there as animals. So everybody just latched onto that immediately and was very, very interested. It compelled us. And the animation, like our animators studied real animals, and they got down to the nitty-gritty of how do each animals, how do they all move? What's their
Mm.
locomotion? How does a wing fold? And so there's some really unique engineering challenges. The way the characters are rigged is completely different. So this was a very, very welcome challenge to everybody. And part of part of that is the textures, of course, that go on top of them. Um, sorry, I'm getting text from California. I
Don't
apologize.
worry.
Um,
Don't worry.
and the interesting thing about it that I didn't expect was how the purity of motion when you don't have a character that has any like extra stuff on it, no shoes, etc. It meant the animation went relatively quickly, and that was something I didn't expect. So it was part of the experience of making the film is how parts of it really flowed very, very quickly. And that was unique. It was something I didn't expect.
Mm,
Um, Along with that, we worked very hard for a visual style that I felt was appropriate for this film, and we greatly pushed the boundaries
mm,
of technology, specifically for this film. DreamWorks had made some huge leaps visually with Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish to get away from that like CG style that was more hyper realistic and getting something that looked more illustrated. And we were pushing for something that was much softer than that again. And it would have its DNA, I think, all the way back in films like Bambi. And we were very inspired by Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro and his forests.
oh, beautiful, beautiful.
So of course we didn't want them to look like that, but
Yeah.
we aspired to our audience feeling the way that we felt when we saw those. They were so fresh and so immersive. So yeah, so to get Peter's pages up onto screen faithfully, we did everything we could to get everything aligned in the right direction. Part of part of the animal designs was to get away from those human eyes that frequently show up in lots of different species besides people, and they're beautiful, but we wanted animal eyes. I was very
Mm.
insistent, like as close to the animal's real eyes. Again, we didn't want to break the spell that we were creating. Um, and so like, yeah, you always go back to the source material and you're trying to be true to that. And that sent us in a really fresh direction.
And then complementing that with, with this, with the robot, with Roz, what's, you've got, there's a book there. There's imagery on the covers of the different versions of the book that are out there. It's so beautifully described in the book, but also you've got creative license. You're making a film version of this, so you kind of, you have to bring it to life in your way, sort of thing. Was there a kind of, I guess, a progression of different things that you tried out with regards to Roz in the way that Roz would be come to life on screen, because it's so brilliant, with the arms and all the different bits, and throughout the whole film, it's just, yeah, it's wonderful to watch.
Absolutely. The robot Roz, as depicted in Peter's books, is it's at once very specific, but it's also very graphic. His style is needing to be things need to be filled in for, of course, the robot on screen. We held to her proportions. I really liked her long arms and the segmented arms that meant that they could move in this very fluid way.
Mm,
So yes, we wanted to be true to her proportions. We also wanted a robot design, hopefully in success, that anybody would look at years from now or decades from now and say, that's Roz. They would instantly identify her. So we needed something that was fresh and distinctive. Um, and then we did our best to give her articulation that would give the animators the freedom to be inventive. And I liken it to like if somebody builds a skateboard, I'm always fascinated. Somebody invents a skateboard, and then Tony Hawk comes along and he does things with it they probably never thought it could do. And so that was the case with Roz. We gave her a lot of articulation, and the animators did things with it that I didn't expect. We wanted her to be a character that was all about pantomime in her motion. Probably the biggest shift that I insisted on is that Peter Brown has the scantest indication of a mouth on Roz, and it's just a line. And I like the way he handles it because it's neutral. She's got a kind of a neutral expression, which is just wonderful. I didn't want a mouth on this robot. I wanted all the articulation on her face is isolated to her eyes. And what the animators got out of that is extraordinary. But I wanted the voice performance and
mm,
pantomime to be I wanted limitations to force creativity into other zones.
mm-hmm.
And the animators did a lot of studying of silent film stars like Buster Keaton, who are all about timing and pantomime. Charlie Chaplin, you know, so her timing, as well as her actual motion, uh,
Mm,
it became all about that.
that's amazing. That's so great. It's kind of all these the detail that goes into even the thought process of, before Lupita's even got in that voice booth as well. I mean, the casting on this as well. That journey of finding your performers to bring these, to bring the script and the animation to life. Do you enjoy that part of it, of kind of putting the puzzle together of who's going to be who and what they can bring to those characters?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Our casting director Christy Soper is a critical part of this entire thing. Um, I I'm terrible at this part, and this is why she does what she does. And so I work on the script to the point where the descriptions are strong enough and clear enough that Christy and I can have a conversation, and then she comes back with ideas for who might be best in each of these roles.
Hmm.
And we got really fortunate in that our very first our first picks, they all signed on, and we got really lucky in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, we've all got a bit of a soft spot for Bill Nye. He's a bit of a national treasure, a very nice man as well. But it's just a lovely. I don't know. I just think that Lupita is just such a perfect choice for Rose, and I don't know why that is. And it's that wonderful thing of, like you say, you work with great collaborators that they kind of go, that's what you need, or that's who you need. And Pedro as well. It's just what is it? Is there a moment in that, when they're in the voice booth where they're playing with the script and they're playing with that character where you go, yeah, do you know immediately that it's right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we always want collaboration. Um, I don't think I would ever want someone to show up and be doing this. I don't know, for whatever reason, and not be concerned with their own character. And we have discussions and we modify things. And the moment someone agrees and signs on to the project, I will immediately, even before we probably have a conversation, I'll run back to the script and I'll do my best to tailor it and modify it to
Oh,
that.
wow.
I'll do my best. I'll try to look down the road and into the future and like how would they play this? And so I'll do my best to modify it. But then once we actually do meet and get together and work together, it's going to be modified again. And Roz Lupita had absolutely the largest role, of course, and she and I worked more than just because of the proportion
Mm,
character. But also that is a very subtle and elusive character as well. Roz is really unusual.
mm,
She's programmed. She has parameters to her thinking, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so Lupita and I had long discussions about how would Roz think and how would she say this and how would she reason things out and how would she, like, there's a moment in the film where she's talking to Pedro's character, Fink the
Think,
Fox.
yeah,
He's explaining to her how things work in their world. And she says, "You're programming." So she's putting it in terms that she understands and stuff like that. So that was an ongoing thing. And
mm,
we shaped and modified her character. But then every time we came to a sequence, we would apply the things that we had decided to that particular moment and make sure
mm,
that we were, she kept me honest. She kept me honest with the writing and even the pronunciation. Like, Roz begins to use contractions at a certain point. But early in the film, she doesn't use contractions, for example. So these are subtle shifts and changes that
mm-hmm.
we had to make sure we tracked them throughout. And
Yeah,
on that, Roz sounds different. It's not just the way she delivers lines and what she says, it's the actual sound of her voice. And Lupita modified her voice in the beginning of the film to have what we would call an engineered optimism.
yeah,
And that means that she hello, and she pushes her voice into this range that changes as the film goes on. So
yeah.
we don't record things in sequence. when we go into a recording session, we might record something maybe from the third act at the beginning of the session for various reasons. So we always had to make sure, like, okay, this is phase one Roz, this is phase two, and this is phase three, and we would
Wow.
bounce recording session. It's why those sessions can actually be physically demanding.
Mm.
Uh, an actor on a set will be doing one scene, likely,
Yeah.
a day. So they're emotionally in a certain place, but we will go upwards of like maybe 15 sequences in one day. And so it's a roller coaster of emotion that is, it's draining. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, how long, like, how many hours would you say Lupita spent in the voice booth then for the recording for the Wild Robot?
Actually recording, we could go upwards of, I mean, a long session would be around 4 hours. That's a pretty demanding session.
Yeah.
And we had a few sessions that were marathons like that. Um, yeah. Uh, it was interesting as well. Like Lupita really, she modified how she approached the microphone in later recording sessions. She would use techniques to keep her voice fresh and rested and hydrated, etc.
Mm.
Um, to make sure that she was keeping her, that she didn't damage herself, etc.
Yeah. Great. I mean, and also another huge part of it is music. You know, there's loads of beautiful music in the film, and Chris Bowers, who's done a fantastic job, and you know, someone who's worked across so many different types of films and TV shows and productions. And talk to me a little bit about Chris being the right musical voice for this film and what the conversations were you had with him about that.
Yeah, the Universal Music Group was very, very excited to suggest Chris as our composer, and I had never worked with Chris before, and I listened to his music immediately, and this is the hard thing for me because I don't have, I never feel like I have enough the right, I think, vocabulary to fully explain myself correctly when it comes to these things, but I liked the sound of what he did, and it just it had its
You
own unique.
felt it.
Yeah, he had a real, there was something very spare sometimes about his music and open, and delicate, that just really, like, it was very moving, but also he could do a more muscular theme when the time came, and I hope I'm putting this in the right terms. We knew going in that we had a huge amount of music that I wanted. I put a premium on music. I learned a long time ago that music can do the heaviest lifting emotionally and story-wise, of anything that we have at our disposal in making a movie. So, in my very first conversations with Chris, I would talk about how there were absolutely going to be zones. I call them like houses. I build houses for music within a story, places in the script where I deliberately stop writing dialogue and music is going to be the voice of that moment. So he understood going in that I was going to be having zones that he was going to be dominant in and he was going to take the lead in. The migration sequence, for example, in the center of the film, it's the midpoint of the film. That would be a great example of that. Emotionally, it's huge. Um, so, uh, so he started early,
Mm.
and he worked with us, for a very long time, and started writing themes and finding themes early on, and began sketching pieces of this movie. And one of the exciting things about The Wild Robot is we have themes that are occurring on the island, but also we have this futuristic robot that's coming from a place that she's not where she's supposed to be. So we would talk about like, oh, she should have chimes and themes so that play from her. And I always likened it to like when I was a kid, the future was always a very exciting thing. The future is going to be amazing, right? It's not dystopian. When I was a kid, it was going to be more like, say, Epcot. It's going to be like, oh, we're going to have
Yeah.
flying cars and moving walkways and it's going to be amazing. So there's an optimism that I wanted him to capture, in the attitude of Roz's themes. And I love what he wrote, of course. And then once he found those themes, it was so amazing to me that he could then modify them to be, like, there's a sequence where Roz is out in a blizzard and she's looking for animals, and it becomes heroic and big, and it's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then other places where it's more vulnerable and sweet, and the tone changes again.
Mm.
It's it's magic to me to see him do what he does. And I can never thank him enough for his devotion to this. And again, he took this whole thing very, very seriously and worked so hard on this.
It's funny because earlier when you mentioned silent movies, the music does the same job as a lot of those old school silent movies did at times, because there's moments where there's no dialogue and you're kind of in awe of what you're watching on the screen, and so this music is kind of almost like your companion in a way in those moments where it's kind of yeah, it's such a huge score. It's kind of got its toe dipped in, for me anyway. I mean, I'm similar to you. It's like I kind of feel, I host a podcast called Soundtracking, but I'm coming to it from a fan point of view as opposed to kind of knowing how to describe music with the right vocabulary. It's about how it makes me feel, and I feel like that he has the score has almost got its toes dipped in lots of beautiful kind of different influences in a way. It's got such classicness to it in terms of like watching a really old movie like Wizard of Oz or something, even in a way. But then it's got this contemporary nature as well. And I wondered if you did have musically any sort of specific reference points that you spoke to with Chris about the music.
I always have music playing as I write sequences, but because I'm just trying to get myself into a specific place, and I'm trying to make a moment. I'm trying to explore the outer boundaries of every moment that
Yeah,
I'm in. So the music I'm putting together is going to have probably no consistency. It's going to be all over the place. So no, I never come in and go like this is a tone or anything.
mm-hmm.
I stay out of that. And uh, one of the things that I'm always very careful about too is that when I'm showing Chris a piece of the movie, because we assemble them in story sketch form.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 100% scale model of the film that we are editing constantly, and I'm always questioning like when I show him something, does he want to hear the music that I put in there? Or do we want to just keep that out of it? And I always ask him, do you want to hear it or do you not?
Yeah,
Because again, I know it's not going to like influence anything because it's not. But yeah, like, do you prefer to hear it or not? Sometimes I think it's probably the best way to indicate like what I'm vibing on.
yeah.
Then it's hard for me to describe, I
No,
think,
I know. We
in
there's
the right
two.
term.
Yeah, there's two camps on that when it comes to asking composers. Some of them like find it really helpful, and then others are like, get it out.
Yeah, yeah. Alan Silvestri, interestingly, he would say, "Give me a playlist, and it can be anything. It can be a piece of music from a TV commercial. It can be a pop song, because he just wants to start understanding just the overall character and vibe. I think, but I think Chris was okay hearing some stuff that I dropped in as temp.
Yeah.
Uh, I think he was okay with that as I remember. But
And
yeah.
did you talk about did you have ideas of kind of instrumentation, because it is quite kind of classical, and I think that's the wonderful thing about it is it's got a kind of timelessness about it because of that as well.
I never came in with any that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not belong in like not even like, can we have more of this kind of drum? Goodness no. But the opposite would occur that as we were sitting in his studio and he would be playing his temp scores, occasionally as we were discussing things, he would turn tracks off and I would hear something and I was always like, what is that? Can you tell me what that is? Because he's really um very inventive with this is and you know what it's like when I watch a cooking show and things are put together and I'm so like how did you know that those two things
Yeah,
go together it was for me it was like a fan just trying to understand how in the world he does this and
yeah,
uh now occasionally I would ask them more of something in the sense that like um there's a moment in the final sequence the big final climactic sequence and he changed the timing, where he went into like I think he went into double time on something,
Mm.
and and like I could hear something that was absolutely thrilling, and I would dig around and say, what is that? And I would try to describe it, and then he would uncover it and he'd say, is it this? And I'd be able to, in my terms, say, whatever that is, it that makes me really like, that is thrilling. Can you
Yeah,
make it prominent? Can you put that out front? And he would change the levels, and what he would do his thing, and and then I would get that emotional reaction. It would be magnified. And if there's the only role I think I would really possibly have is like, whatever that is, it makes me feel good. Can you give me more of that? And he would always keep it in proportion, but he would understand what I was saying.
yeah.
Uh,
But that's what you want. You want it to make you feel a certain way. You want it to make you want to physically feel something when it's, yeah,
yeah.
when it's doing the job right, for sure. Absolutely.
I guess in that sense, I'm just playing the role of somebody in the audience, and
Yeah.
like whatever that moment is, whatever that instrumentation is, it triggered something
Mm.
that was what I wanted, what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Um,
Such wonderful themes in this story as well that are, they resonate kind of, today and around the world, and kind of what we need for sure. It's kind of, and that's the wonderful thing about, sometimes I think about films, is it can kind of almost like, turn a mirror on society and kind of make us just take a moment to think about where we are. And I just think it's a beautiful gift, the film, and also the fact that we've got more wild robot stories out there that I hope you're considering to potentially bring to the world as well.
yeah, I've read the second book and I'm beginning to read the third book, and I really like that, they are consistent character-wise, of course, but they're very different shapes.
Mm.
So I like the idea of going into the second book, for example, because of course we know how the first one ends, and there's a place for the next one to go. And that's the stuff I love about, I think, this particular series is there's enough fresh challenges in the next book that
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and do the very same thing again, which is we're going to have to start figuring out, like what happens when and in what proportion, and just working it all out. And that means if we do a good job, it's going to be fresh again. And
Yeah.
that's that's what we strive for.
Oh, so it's the best news. It's the best news, Chris, that you're already thinking about it. I love it. And before I let you go, we are compiling a playlist of our guests of their favorite film music. So I would love it if you have a piece of music from any film that you would like to submit to be on the playlist. It could be
Uh,
the first thing that pops in your head, or something that has been your favorite forever, or whatever you liked, really.
oh
Do you
boy,
have something?
there's a, from the movie Spirit, the track titled "Run Free." Um, that's that's one that I've used when I've written certain sequences. That
Oh,
is the first one that comes to mind, I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
You find it inspiring?
yeah. It's got an unrelenting drive, and it again, I'm putting this in terms that Chris Bowers he should be here explaining.
No,
But
we want your emotional connection to it. It's fine.
yeah, it keeps it so fresh. It shifts. I don't know what it's doing, but it's keeping the same level of drive, but it feels like it's getting bigger and bigger, but it's not doing it by just getting louder. It's shifting the way that the instrumentation is working so that it's constantly shifting gears, which keeps it fresh, and it refreshes itself, which means like it's renewing that thrilling bit inside itself over and over and over again. And I don't know how long it is, but it's not short. It goes for
Mm,
a good long time. And I'm really impressed with it.
amazing. What a beautiful choice. Thank you so much. It's great to chat to you. And thank you for bringing this story to the big screen. I can't wait to go with my boys to watch it, because, like I say, this story has such a part of their childhood. So it's lovely to kind of have an opportunity to share that all together.
Oh, I'm really excited for them to see it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Congratulations. Lovely to chat to you.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good day.